All right. Well, welcome. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. How many people listened to Adam's keynote yesterday? And one of the things he was talking about was myths, right? But today we are not going to talk about myths. We're going to talk about facts. We're going to show you instead of having this myth of, trying to explain the unexplainable. All right. So today's session is Explain the Unexpected with Tableau's order of operations. And that's really what we want to just focus in on is the order of operations that you have with, when working with Tableau. My name is Kevin Emick, and I'm an enterprise sales consultant from the great state of Michigan. Woo! Yeah, all right. So a couple fun facts about Michigan. So we are known as the Mitten State, for those of you who are not geography majors. And when you ask somebody from Michigan, hey, where do you live in Michigan? The first thing we do is we pull out our hand and we point. You could be from Detroit, maybe Benton Harbor, St. Joe, Lansing, the capital, Traverse City, the great place to go on vacation, or maybe here at the base of the thumb, which is Little Lapeer, Michigan, all 8,000 of us. Fun fact number 2 about Michigan, and I ask your neighbors here who said they're from Michigan, is if you ask somebody from Michigan, hey, where are you going this weekend? You will get the words up north. Big population is down here in the southeast part. We all head to the north to enjoy what Michigan has to offer. Fun fact number 3, it's been told that if I were to take any one of you and drop you any place in the state of Michigan and you were to walk 1 mile, you will come across water. It could be a pond, it could be a stream, it could be a creek, it could be or one of our 11,000 plus lakes, or maybe one of the Great Lakes. So the 3 takeaways from that is we walk around with our map, we're always going up north, and we have a lot of fresh water. So before we get going, I'm going to have my co-presenter introduce himself.
Hi everybody, I'm Nick Speck. I am a sales consultant at Tableau as well. I unfortunately cannot show you where I live on my hand because I live in beautiful Cleveland, Ohio. It rocks. Yeah. But I'm a huge sports fan, and we've got 2 professional teams in Cleveland. We've got our basketball team, the Cleveland Cavaliers. Their season's starting pretty soon, so really excited about that. We've got our baseball team, the Cleveland Indians, who have a huge game tonight in the playoffs against the Yankees. Any Yankees fans out there? I see one. I'll get you some tissues later. We also have a JV football team. But how they're playing, they might really be considered a freshman team. So I won't even mention their name right now. But I've been with Tableau for 2 years now, and before that I was a customer of Tableau's over at PNC Bank. And with that, I'm just going to hand it back over to Kevin to get us started today.
All right, perfect. Thanks, Nick. All right, so what are we going to talk about today? All right, so we are going to explain this unexpected behavior that you get with the order of operations. We're going to take a look at some of life's orders. We'll talk about the unstructuredness of them, and we're going to talk about structured. And we're talking about the query pipeline, what it is and why does it matter. And then we're going to look at some common scenarios that are out there. We're going to look at what's going on, why is this happening, and even more importantly, what can you do about it? So I know now that you're looking and saying, why is he wearing sunglasses? Well, man, he is so cool. I want to be part of that cool kid club. These are the Data Love sunglasses. So the reason I was wearing those, we're going to have some shout-outs today. And we have just a few of these rockin' sunglasses. If you don't get one, you can also go down to the store and buy one, but it's better to get one for free. So I'm going to be going through and I'm going to be asking a lot of questions. Many of them are going to be rhetorical questions. I'm going to answer them myself. But I will also be going through saying, shout out. So if you're quick and you're loud, Nick's going to run and give you a pair of sunglasses there. So I only have a few, but let's make some fun out of this. All right? So we walk into a restaurant. We've all been to a restaurant. First thing that happens is you are greeted by the host staff. They take you to your table, they sit you down, and they go and they give you your menu. So first shout out, what looks good up here? Oh, I heard pizza over here. Who said pizza? Okay, but you get to split the glasses. All right. So maybe it was seafood, maybe it's pizza like Nick. Nick's a pizza guy. Or maybe you're like myself and you go for the beef entree, that New York strip. But the whole idea about going to a restaurant, and the great thing about it, is that you can get it however you want. So if you're a pizza person, you could say, I want anchovies and onions, or I want sausage and pepperoni. If the beef guy like myself may say, well, I'd like my steak cooked medium, get some potatoes, some veggies. But beyond that, you also have the ability to order the food and have it delivered in any order that you want. So if you want to start off with your entree and then get your soup and then finish up with your salad, you can do that. Or maybe you want to start off with that wonderful cheesecake up there and then maybe get your entree and then finish up with soup. But the point is that you have control. You can order it however you want, prepared, but then you also have the ability to have it delivered to you in any order. You say, man, Kevin, you're making us hungry. So what's on the opposite end of that spectrum? If we have the total unstructuredness of ordering food, well, we have Aunt Sally. How many people remember Aunt Sally, right? Okay. So Aunt Sally, that was an acronym that was created to help students learn or remember how to do mathematical equations. So please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, do everything in the parentheses, then your exponents, multiplication, division left to right, addition, subtraction left to right. Now you can't wake up one morning and say, today I think I'll just do subtraction first, and then I'll do my exponents, and then some multiplication. No. There is an order of operations. Ooh, we are intimate now. So there is an order of operations to doing mathematical equations, a very structured way that you need to approach. And if you don't, you're going to get the wrong answer. So you can say, well, Kevin, where does Tableau fit on that spectrum? You have ordering food and having it delivered in any way, very unstructured. And then we have mathematical equations that are very structured. You must follow that order of operations in order to get the right answer. Well, with Tableau, we have the query pipeline. And it leans more towards the structuredness, but understanding what it is and understanding what happens and when and where gives you the ability to do things maybe a little bit differently in order to adjust where they're done to get the answer that you're seeking. So on the pipeline, we work from the top down. So the first thing we have, if you're doing extracts, is the extract filter. Use case might be, I have 20 years worth of data sitting in my underlying data source. I only want to analyze 5 years. I'll do an extract and just pull those 5 years out. Then the next item down, and you don't have to have all of these. I should point that out, right? Not every visualization you build will have every one of these. These are the possibilities. So the next one down is data source filter. Maybe I'm going against an extract or my underlying data source. Use case might be that I just want to bring back records for the state of Michigan. Or maybe I'm doing row-level security. So I'm only going to bring back the records that I, Kevin, have the right to see. The fun part starts where I have it sort of in that blue box. These are things that you're going to do in your visualization, right? The first two are more in your data connectivity part. So we have context filters, being able to put something in context so everything else below that will reference that context there. Then we have some things off to the right side. We have your sets, conditional filter, TopIn, fixed level of detail expressions. Those get processed in parallel. That's why they're sort of setting off there. None of them have any more rights, if you will, or order than any of the other ones. They all sort of get done at the same time. Then we drop back into the pipeline and we have dimensional filters. Maybe I just want to see category of office supplies or furniture. Then once again, we have some items that get done in parallel. Your include, exclude, level of detail, simple aggregations, min, max, sum, average, those types of things. And then here's where we do data blending. So as opposed to we might do a data source join up higher, at the very beginning, we can bring and blend data inside the visualization. This is where that is going to happen in the pipeline. Then we can apply measure filters, profit greater than something, margin less than something. Then we compute your forecast, we do clustering, and table calculations get done here. So just notice where they are in that pipeline. Once you have the table calculations computed, then you can use a filter or have them as a filter. And then finally, we finish where you can have your trend lines, your reference lines, and do pages. Okay, so another shout out coming. Help me, or maybe take a guess at what these two things have in common. So we have the great state of Iowa, 56,000 square miles, 3.2 million people. What was that? Corn. Okay, say that one again loud. You sell, oh, you're from Iowa. Okay. And that could very well be the case. But let's go and focus in on this grain thing that people said. So some fun facts about your great state of Iowa. Okay, so Iowa is 85% plus or minus of the land used in Iowa is for farming. 6% of the people in Iowa have never been to a farm, just that many. So my question to you, have you been to a farm? You grew up on a farm, there you go, perfect. I mentioned the 3.2 million, first in soybean production, and for 150 years been first in corn production. 192 bushel per acre, and people, that is a lot of corn per acre. When I grew up in Michigan, if we got 60 or 70, that was a lot. 2015, 2.5 billion bushels of corn. That is more than most countries produce. And ethanol is produced from corn. You can get about 3 gallons, and the byproduct is usable. And then corn is found in a bunch of items, crayons, beer, but no, that's not the answer. All right, that was a trick question. The correlation between the two is we're just going to be looking at what our friends in Iowa drink. So we might look at things like, oh, were they drinking Captain Morgan? Or Jim Beam? Or maybe the higher end, what do we got, Grey Goose? Or maybe I want to find out, what are our friends in Johnson County, the University of Iowa, what are they drinking? So this is the data set that we are going to use for our examples. So I'm going to put my hat on of a data analyst that is working for an alcohol distribution company. And so I want to ask and answer these questions. What are the top 10 products that are sold in each city? Then we're going to expand on that and say, but they have to have a bottle price greater than $15. Then we're going to look at it and say, how do I find the average number of bottles sold per county, per person per county? And then Nick's going to come up and talk about the top 3 cities in each county and showing reference lines for both county and the overall average. All right? So, our first question. What are the top 10 products in each city? Let's come in. So many times we find that our question doesn't necessarily line up with the terminology in the data source, right? I think we probably have all done that. So I kept it pretty much like it came to me. So first thing I want to look at is this total. That happens to be sales. So we'll look at that. We're going to look at description because that's the product. And let's go ahead and flip that around. So given I have a lot of cities, let's just go and focus on our friends in Iowa City. And let's look at our Iowa City. And let's go ahead and sort that. Okay, so here we have Iowa City looking at our products. We just listed them all out by the total sales. So we just want the first 10, the top 10. I mean, that should be pretty easy, right? So I'll just come over to description and say, oh, let's just put that on a filter, do top 10 on total. And there we have it. Or do we? Well, let's go back and let's look. So when we look here, this is just showing the list of all of them. What's number 2? We have Jameson. So that should be in my top 10, right? It should be number 2 when I go and just show my top 10. But it's not there. Oh. So what's going on? Well, let's take a look. So here's the pipeline. So the first thing we're doing is looking at the data and saying, okay, as an overall data set, give me the top 10 by description of the total. Then we have that. Then we say, okay, now let's apply the filter for Iowa City. But really what I want is Iowa City and then give me the top 10, right? Sort of, this is backwards. So when we look at the pipeline, we need to make a choice, or we need to make some decisions. What we want to do is either be able to move my dimension filter up the pipeline, have it execute earlier, or move my TopIn down below the dimension filter, right? So we can play with this a little bit. So we need to look at it. What are our options? Well, when we look at this, we see that if I want to move my dimension filter up, I have the possibility of maybe making that a context filter. Maybe that'll take care of it, or I have to figure out a way of taking my TopIn and moving that down. Well, let's take a look at making a context filter. So we come into Iowa City and say, bring this into context. So everything else is going to be applied against this. And there we have it. How many people have made that mistake? Right? Okay. And you're not alone. If you looked around, you would have seen a lot of your colleagues, right? So putting things in context then allows us to do the TopIn against that filtered record set. All right, so now we want to take and move this just a little bit further and say, okay, not only what are our top 10, but we want it with a bottle price greater than 15. So this is just what we did right here. So it should be simple, right? I should be able to say, okay, let me come in and take my bottle price, and we'll just put that on filter. We'll set that as average. And we'll say, let's do greater than 15. And you know what? Let's put bottle price up on the column shelf. So I do have my bottle price greater than 15, but what happened? We went from 10 records, now we only have 7. Well, let's take a look at what the pipeline's doing. All right, first thing is our dimensional filter. It's in context, so we're just grabbing Iowa City. The next thing we said was, let's just do a top 10. Right, so now we have that reduced record set. Then we said, the average bottle price, make it greater than 15. Well, only 7 out of those 10 records, or 10, were greater than 15. So that's all we're going to get. So we still want 10. So how can we do this? We can maybe move my average bottle price up the pipeline, or we can take our TopIn and move it down, right? So we can adjust things. So looking at our options, I see that fixed level of detail calculation. I know that it calculates all the records before they're filtered. Maybe that'll work. Let's give that a try. So create a calculated field. We'll call this average bottle price. And we'll say that this is the fixed at my city and my description, and we want to get the average bottle price. Finish that up. That. Okay, calculation's valid. Let's, a little bit hard to see, but there we go. Right, we're doing fixed at the city and description at that dimensional level, and we're saying give us the average bottle price. Okay. We'll take this one off, take that one off. Let's put this one back in. That's the one we just created. And let's filter on that. Average, greater than 15. Same answer. Well, let's take a look at what the pipeline's telling us. All right, fail by example. So when we did the calculation, it is doing it in the query pipeline right next to TopIn. So they're both being done at the same time. The problem is that we're taking that fixed level of detail calculation and we're still using it as a measure. So it's still happening further down the pipeline, right? Makes sense? So now we get to take a step back and say, okay, what else, what other kind of options do we have? What else can we do? So what I need to figure out is there a way to take my TopIn and push that down further into the pipeline, beyond the measure filter? So let's look at some of our options. We do a forecast. Yeah, that's probably not going to help us. Clustering, probably not, but maybe a table calculation. You know, table calculations are pretty powerful. Let's see once if we can do something there. Okay, so I want to do a table calculation on that total. So I'm going to go ahead and make a copy of it, and let's see what kind of options we have. So TableCalc, and I apologize for those in the back that can't read that, but so our different choices, right? We have running total, difference, percent of total, rank. Maybe we can use rank. Well, let's try that. All right, so we can see now that we have numbers, so we're ranking our records. Let's see once, maybe we can, let's pull their description off, because that's where we're doing our top 10. Let's see once if we can take this TableCalc, put it on my filter, and say, just show me 1 through 10. Boom. Right, so we have our 1 through 10, or 10 through 1, our bottle price, oops, greater than 15. So let's look at what we did. Okay, we have our dimensional filter once again. Then we could have used either the regular expression, the regular sum, or the average, or the one that we did, I guess it was our bottle price greater than 15 or our level of detail greater than 15. Either one of those we could have used, and then we put down further in the pipeline our rank as a TableCalc. So knowing and understanding sort of the possibilities in the pipeline allows us to start adjusting things. So I don't have to do the TopIn necessarily where TopIn is, right? I can say, oh, I could also do a table calculation a little bit further down and get the answer that we're looking for. Okay, is that making sense? A little bit? Okay, question number 3. What I want to do, and so here's the answer. This is what it's going to look like, or something similar to this. I want to find the average number of bottles sold per person per county. Then we're going to look at the top 3 counties, and then we're going to look at percent of sales. Okay. First thing we're going to do is, well, let's get a map of Iowa. So we have our counties, and we have our, what are we looking for? Bottles sold per person. We have bottle quantity. Let's go ahead and drop that on. Let's look at a average. And let's go ahead and put that on label. All right, so this is giving me my average sold by county, but not, and that's for the whole record set, right? But it's not breaking this down by person yet. And I don't have census data in my data source here, but I do have another data source with that. So I can take a look. So here I have my data source. I have 2016 population. So can I do maybe some type of calculation using that and using my bottle quantity? So let's do that, and we'll call this bottles per person. And do sum of our bottle quantity. And let's then divide that by our population. Okay. So now instead of using the bottles sold, let's go ahead and replace that with our new calculation. And let me go and get some different colors on here. Okay. So from a distributor of adult beverages perspective, I might look at this and have some insight and say, what is this blue spot down here? That's Polk County, state capital. Now, they seem to be drinking a little bit. And we might want to advertise more, get more revenue from there, or maybe we're looking at some of the other states that aren't drinking or counties that aren't drinking as much, and maybe want to push revenue in here. Here we have Johnson County, the University of Iowa. But the data can tell a different story. So maybe I change hats. Let's say that I'm working down at the state capitol and I'm in human health and development. Maybe I look at this just a little bit different, and let's just swap our colors around. So now a number of bottles sold isn't necessarily, or per person is not necessarily a good thing. And if I'm sitting down at the state capitol, something's popping out to me. And I'm looking at this saying, oh my word, Dickinson County is selling 22.26 bottles per person over this time frame, and they are 1.5 times more than the next closest county. I mean, by now I'm on the phone and I'm calling up every counselor I can think of. I'm renting space. We got an epidemic. We have an alcoholism problem up in Dickinson County. Right? I mean, that's what the data is telling us. But whoa, hang on a second. Let's maybe do a little bit more investigating on Dickinson County. So, shout out time. What stands out in Dickinson County? The lake, right there. Yeah, I mean, right, and she knew the name of it, there's lots of lakes up here in this area. So let's look at some fun facts about Dickinson County. They are home to 3 of the 7 largest lakes in Michigan. I mean, in Iowa. Now, I mentioned well, let's just look a bit more. 404 square miles, they are the smallest county by landmass. They are the 5th smallest overall size, 22 square miles of water, 15 parks and recreational areas. So I mentioned in my intro that I'm from Michigan and that you can walk a mile in any direction in Michigan and come across water. I dare to bet you if I take you and I put you in Iowa in the middle of a cornfield and you walk for a mile, you're still in a cornfield. You walk another mile, you're still in a cornfield. So lakes are few and far between. So I suspect that the hardworking farmers and farmhands and others in the state that want to enjoy getting away may very well go to Dickinson County. You might camp, rent a cottage, enjoy the lakes. Now, when I go on vacation, I don't pack my adult beverages. I get there, I get settled, then I figure out what I want to consume. I'll go down to the store and buy it, and I suspect that's probably most everybody here. So I suspect that that number is probably skewed by the influx of people that are enjoying Dickinson County and all that it has to offer. So the question is, can you say party, party, party? All right. So that's what I suspect. And so we're going to hold off on opening up some clinics and sending up therapists and so forth because it's probably not a epidemic. All right, couple more questions. So now I want to figure out what are the top 3 counties with number of bottles sold. Well, I think we've seen this in one of the previous examples. I should be able to take county, drag it over to filter, and say, show me the top 3 of bottles per person. Bottles per person. Well, that's interesting. Where's the field? You know, where's it at? It's right here. Bottles per person. It exists, but it's not showing up in my selection for filter of the top 10. Well, let's take a look at what the pipeline says. Oops. All right, faux pas, boom here. Okay. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to do a TopIn on a field that came from a blend, so it doesn't exist yet. Right? We look at the pipeline, the blend doesn't happen until further down the pipeline. So therefore, you can't use that in doing a TopIn. So what are our other choices? Well, we've seen earlier, maybe a TableCalc. But will a TableCalc work with blended data? Well, let's take a look. So here's our field. We have the bottles per person. That's our blended calculation. We'll go ahead and drop that up on filter, say OK, because really what we want is to turn this into a TableCalc. And sure enough, we can do a TableCalc of a rank on a blended calculation, so we can do 1 through 3, and there we go. And if we wanted to see it, right, so we could get out of the map and see it. All right, so let's take a look at what the pipeline says. So we have our 2 data sources, and then we can do a rank on a blended calculation. So once again, an option, right? I wanted to do a TopIn. Field didn't exist yet. Let's look further down the pipeline. Oh, TableCalc and rank will work for that. Okay, let's take a look. One more. So what are the top 3, oh, we looked at that. So what are the percent of sales? Well, Tableau, that's pretty easy, right? We know we can do that in a table calculation. So we'll take our total, put it up there, and let's go ahead and say instead of that, we want a percent. No, we want TableCalc, percent of total. Okay, so if we look at Dickinson County, we can see that they have 1.31% of the overall sales are done in Dickinson County. Now, I want to maintain that number regardless of what counties I select. I want it always to maintain and tell me what that county's percent of overall was. So do we get that here? So if I said, well, show me Dickinson, Polk, and Johnson. Those are the only 3 counties I want to look at right now. and keep your eye on the 1.31%, right? So I say keep only, and what happened? It recalculated. It recalculated based on what I was keeping in from a filter. Okay, we sort of expect that, but I'm like, okay, that's nice to know, but I want to maintain that 1.31%. I always want to have that number too. So how can I do that? How can I keep that number? Well, let's take a look at what the pipeline's doing. Okay, so we have our two-dimensional, maybe we should go, where's that at? Up there, there. Okay, so we're doing this as a table calculation. So we did our dimensional filter. We just kept or selected a couple counties. Then we have our blend, and then we're doing that table calculation percent of sales. So it's changing because it's further down the pipeline than our filter. So what can we do? Well, we need to move the calculation of percent of sales up further in the pipeline. So maybe a level of detail calculation can do that. All right, so let's say calculation percent of, let's just say total sales, and I'm going to cheat. And we'll do this. All right. So if I look at and I say, okay, I want to create a level of detail calculation, I can do my sum of wherever I'm at, whatever counties I'm selecting, sum that up, and then divide that by the overall. And maintaining that. So what's in the little squiggly brackets, the sum total, that's that table calculation. It's going to actually be calculated beforehand and always maintained. Say okay. So now we have percent of total sales. Let's throw that on label. Let's go ahead and format that. Okay, so now we can see that we have our 1.31% for both the percent of total sales, so on our table calculation, and also our level of detail calculation. So the question is, if I just select a number here and say keep those, does it maintain that? And it does. So we have both of the numbers there. So let's take a look at what the pipeline's doing. Okay, so from a pipeline perspective, once again, we work top down. The first thing it's going to do is do that fixed level of detail expression. It's going to compute that number that we need, that total. So we'll have that all the way down. Then we can pick whatever counties we want. We'll do the blend, and then any other calculations and filters and so forth that we want. All right, Nick.
All right. Cool. Thanks, Kev.
You bet.
Cool, so before I get into example number 4, let me cue that up real quick. Quick shout out. Does anybody know the football team I was referring to as our junior football team? Yeah, that was an easy one, wasn't it? We have a motto in Cleveland.
I'll get it.
We've got a motto in Cleveland, even before the season starts, there's always next year with the Browns. So maybe one day, maybe, decade or so. All right, so let's get back into Tableau here. And example number 4. So this is asking, how do I look at the top 3 cities' total sales in each county and show the reference line for the overall average and the county average? Seems pretty simple, pretty straightforward, right? So let's just dive in here. All right, so the first thing we're going to want to look at is our total sales. And let's look at that by the county. Again, we can sort and flip it for you guys. We also need to bring the detail in of the city, because remember, we want to see this eventually of the top 3 cities by county. All right? So we've got the overall sales here by county and city. So now all we have to do is throw the reference lines on. Now you'll notice when I'm dragging a reference line on here, you'll see these 3 different options. And if you're not familiar with this nomenclature, table is just going to be the overall. It's not going to take into account any of those dimensions out there. A pane, in this particular example, is going to be the county. And you can see that that's broken out by a line. It's pretty faint here, but that would be considered a pane. And then cell is each individual mark, or bar in this instance. Okay? So if we wanted to look at the overall average, let's just drop that on table. Now, let's make that nice and bold and red for those in the back. And now all we have to do is throw in another reference line for the county, which would be, again, remember, the pane. All right, so let's take a look at these numbers here. So the overall average for Iowa is 961,000. And then for Polk County in particular, the county average is 5.7 million. So keep those numbers in mind because they're going to be kind of important here in a second. So now what we have to look at is our top 3 cities by county. So a simple way to do it, right? Just filter on city and look at our top 3. I wish it was that easy. This is just looking at our top 3 cities overall, and it doesn't take into account the county. Okay, so I don't think that that's actually going to work in our particular instance. So Kevin ran through a couple different ways that you can also filter for the top N through a table calculation or a rank. So we actually do a rank based on the total sales. So I'm going to do this by rank. And I'm also going to throw that in between county and city. So not quite what I'm wanting, right? Because what I really want to see is for each county, I want to rank each city in there. So for Polk County in particular, I want to see 1, 2, 3. And then in Lynn County, I want it to restart and show 1, 2, 3 again. So to accomplish this, we simply have to make sure that we're computing this the correct way. So right now, by default, it's just table down. But remember, the counties in here are panes. So we can do the pane across and then down. So essentially what it's going to do, it's going to look inside of Polk County. It's going to rank these cities, 1 through 15, I believe there are, and then restart for Lynn County. All right, perfect. So now that we have this table calculation working as we want, we can just throw this on the filter and show 1, 2, 3. Now we're getting somewhere. But it looks like our average lines are throwing us out of whack a little bit. So Polk County, 22.5 million. That'd be pretty incredible, that amount of sales. Before it was 5.7. So now the overall average, that's the 1.4 million, about a half million more than it was before. So let's take a look at the pipeline and kind of see what's going on here. All right, so what we did is we created a table calculation. We ranked our total sales, and then we made sure that it was pane across. And then we threw reference lines out there for the overall average and the county average. Now, unfortunately, reference lines are happening at the very bottom of the query pipeline. So we have to figure out a way, how do we move these average lines further up in the pipeline? And looking through here, I think that the fixed level of detail, again, is going to come to our rescue. So let's take a look at that. So I'm going to get rid of these reference lines because it's not going to work in our particular case here. And I have to create 2 calculations. So I've got my overall average. And is everybody familiar with the level of detail calculations? We've been doing quite a bit with them today. If you're not, there's tons of breakout sessions that really go in depth into level of detail calcs, looking at fixed, include, exclude, which ones can be dimensions, which ones can be measures. So really great sessions out there if you're interested. All right, so I need to build this overall average calculation. So what I need to do is fix this calculation to the county and the city, and then give my total sales. Oops. There we go. All right, so what this should be showing is actually exactly what's out on the viz right now, because at the viz level, we're looking at the county and the city. So if I drag this out, hopefully, I am going to see the exact same thing, which we do. All right, and what I'm doing here, just taking this step by step, especially for complex calculations, it's just a really great way to troubleshoot, because you don't want to get to the end of your calculation or your viz, have the wrong answer, and have no idea where you made that mistake. So I'm just taking this step by step. All right, so now that we have the total sales by city and county, we just have to wrap this up in an average. Cool. So what this should be showing us, fingers crossed, is 961,000. If I remember that correctly? Yeah, 961,000. So we've got the overall average calculation created. Copy that. Now we need to make another calculation for the county average. And I'm actually going to start with that same overall average because I'm doing a nested LOD calc. And we've already got the average, so we just need to show where to fix it at. So I'm going to fix this, again, to the county. All right, let's throw that up there. And if we're looking at Polk County in particular, we can see 5.7 million. Cool, so we got our two calculations here created. Now, how do we switch these bars into reference lines? Because that's really what we want. Let's just get rid of these. This is just my troubleshooting measures out there. And I'm going to do some trickery here with the measure values. All right, definitely don't need all of the measures out there. So all I need to do here is just filter out and just keep the calculations that I need. So county and overall average. Okay. Now using our trusty dual axis, gives us a whole bunch of circles. But that's okay because since we're using the dual axis, we've got these two separate marks cards. So we got a marks card for our total sales. So we can switch that back from circle to a bar. And then coming down into our measure values, remember the measure values are actually representing our overall average and our county average. So we can switch that back to a circle, and we want these as lines. So I think we're 99% there. The scale's off though, right? So if we look at the axes up top here, we can see this is about 5-6 million up here. Our numbers are correct, 5.7, 961,000. By the way, Des Moines, 49 million. These politicians love to drink. All right, so what we just need to do here is just simply synchronize the axes. All right, so let's take a look at the movement here in the pipeline and how we achieve that. So what we did before is we used a reference line to show the overall and the county averages. And we saw that it was only taking into account those top 3 cities and nothing else. So what we were able to do is move those reference lines further up using the fixed level of detail calc. And we created 2 calculations. We created one for the county and for the overall. And then we were able to do the dual axis and kind of make those look like a reference line. All right, so as Kevin talked about at the beginning, in life, there's unstructured and there's structured orders of operations. Whether you're looking at ordering dinner and ordering dessert first and dinner second, it doesn't really matter. Really unstructured, all the way to the other end of the spectrum with math, and please remember my dear Aunt Sally, it's very rigid. We've showed 4 examples here of Tableau and why the order of operation matters, and how you can manipulate that to get the results that you need. So it tends to fall in between there, but it skews more towards the math end of the spectrum. Now, sometimes it just takes another example for this to really solidify in people's minds. So we went out and we found a quick video for you guys that this might help.
There's only one caveat. The guy runs the place is a little temperamental, especially about the ordering procedure. He's secretly referred to as the soup Nazi. He yells, you don't get your soup. Just follow the ordering procedure and you'll be fine.
Words to live by.
As you walk in the place, move immediately to your right. Medium turkey chili. Medium crab bisque. Just forget it, let it go. Excuse me, you forgot my bread. Bread, you got that. No. You want a friend? We got free bread. You want bread? Yes, please. 3 now.
Awesome. Cool. So really what we want you to keep in mind is whether you're talking about Tableau or math or even sometimes soup, the order of your operations does matter. And as always, we love to hear your feedback. So please fill out your survey. We love to hear how we can improve each year. And really appreciate you guys attending. Thank you.
Thank you.